So I'm going to be making this in a woven fabric today. So I've gone up 2 sizes, and I've used the Christine Jonson patterns insert here, which you'll see in your pattern envelope. And inside of it, it shows you how the pattern fits. This one in this case is tight fitting, so I've gone up 2 sizes. It also tells you a little bit about ease, and then probably the most important thing on the inside is it gives you the finished garment measurements at the hip, which is really important if you're making it in a woven. You want to make sure that those finished garment measurements allow 2 to 3 inches above your normal hip size. So at my size, I needed to go up 2 sizes to be able to make this in a woven fabric. And I'm going to make it in both a woven and a knit, and I'll talk about alterations for both. So the first thing you need when you're working with this is you're going to need your pattern piece cut out. By the way, it's a single pattern piece, so it's nice and easy to do this alteration. And you're going to need a dinner plate. I'm using a nice large dinner plate right here. And you're going to go ahead and measure your finished preferred length on you. So my finished preferred length is a mid-calf length of 27 inches finished. So I know that I have 2 inches at the waist here, and I have approximately a, this one down here says 1/2 inch hem allowed down here. So I have a 1/2 inch down here. So that means I'm gonna need 2.5 extra inches. So I've measured the length of my skirt and I've made a mark here at 29.5 inches. This is gonna be my finished length. Okay, so that accommodates for the waistband and accommodates for this. So you just decide where you want it to go, and then you go ahead and measure accordingly. And I'll provide some instruction in the blog post about this as well. Now you take your dinner plate and you place it on that mark that you have right there, and you slide it all the way over to the edge where the side of the dinner plate meets the edge of the pattern and the bottom of the dinner plate meets the line. Now fortunately I'm using a grid so I can see the grid underneath here, but you can, if you're not using a grid underneath here, you can go ahead and just mark the line all the way across with a ruler. And then I want to take my pencil and I want to trace 1/4 of this dinner plate right to here. And then I'm going to just come straight down this line here all the way to this other side, and I'm going to slide my dinner plate all the way across here, and I'm going to line it up with my side seam and line it up with my hem length, and I'm going to draw my next curve. And this becomes, front and back pattern pieces, becomes my curved shape on both sides. Now the next step is to accommodate the waistband for a woven fabric. Now this waistband is curved. You'll notice in the sewing pattern it curves up at the top here, which means that if you were to make this in a woven and you pulled it on over your hips, you would get stuck about your knees because that part up there is narrower than your hip measurement. Okay, so we need to make sure that we extend this straight up. And to do that, you can take just a little extra piece of tissue off of your pattern. You can cut it out, and then you can lay it down right here so that the side of the tissue lines up right there with the side of your pattern piece. And then you can draw, you can tape, I recommend that you tape this down, although I'm not taping it down right now. You can tape this down, and then I recommend that you draw a line on that tissue paper straight up from the hip spot right here. So essentially what you're doing is you're squaring off this hip measurement here. You can cut the same curve at the waist here, but you're squaring off this hip measurement so it comes straight up from the hip and then across the waist. And that means since this is your hip measurement, you will be able to pull this skirt on over your hips when you have finished sewing it in a woven fabric. Those are your only 2 pattern alterations on this pattern that you're going to need to make to do our fun drawstring waist skirt. The rest of it is all construction. So once you have your skirt cut out, either of your woven fabric, or if you're making it in a knit fabric, you do not need this extra piece, okay? Once you have it cut out, your curved hem and everything else, you can go ahead and sew as normal. Now, if you're worried about cutting into your pattern and having this curved hem here forever, you can always trace this onto another piece and go ahead and have your curved, like fold up your pattern piece here on the length and shorten line, and then add an additional piece at the bottom out of gift wrap tissue, whatever you want, to accommodate your curve. That way you can fold that up if you're not going to use it. I don't really care because I'm just going to go ahead and cut this out. I never make this skirt really all the way full length anyway. This would probably be the longest I would ever make it, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave my curve. And of course, if I decide to, I can just keep this same piece that I'm going to cut off, and I can just tape it back on to the curve if I want to make it straight in the future. So I don't really care. I'm just going to go ahead and cut right into my pattern piece. You can decide to trace or not. So that's how we do that. We'll move on to construction next.